So that was interesting. Definitely needed more than one coat of wax on there. So now here's the moment of truth. It could either be good or it could suck. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's not bad. That is not bad at all. Hell yeah. Just need to trim up the edges now, and oh, that looks nice. I mean, this powdery stuff just clean off. I mean, there's a couple little bubbles here, but it's minor. A couple little bubbles up here. Yeah. Hardly noticeable. It's almost perfect. The weave, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Now let's see. Just out of curiosity, let's see how much this thing weighs. Again, with the knowledge that some of it's going to get trimmed off, so I'm guessing maybe 4 pounds. Let me change mode here. Get into pounds, ounces. Alright, so this is about 3.8 pounds. No, 3.5 pounds. Yeah, this will be trimmed off. But yeah. I like the way the black matte replicated the metal finish. It looks better than the metal finish on the original, because that was scratched. Ooh. Love it when it works out. Alright, now I just need to trim and wash. And yeah. So now it's time to trim the flange off. I'm going to use the oscillating tool. It's going to be, I'm going to have to be careful not to get too close to it. Then I'll do the final sanding on the drum sander, the drill press. Here it is so far. This is about as close as I was comfortable getting with the oscillating tool. So I washed all the residue off, taped up the edges because I didn't want anything happening when I'm sanding these off. And the next step is going to be the drill press. Just kind of go along here like this. Should be able to get a pretty controlled edge on that. Should probably put my mask back on. Not that it's going very far, I don't know. It might go back. So let's review. I've done one T-top here. I still have another one to lay out, but I wanted to do like a mid-project review. Actually more than halfway through now, so because the molds are really a big part of this. But this is the part with the edges cleaned up. I sanded them on the drill press with the sanding wheel attachment. But what I found is that that was okay in terms of taking a pretty good bite out of the flange, trimming the flange, but it still took a while. And aside from that, it heated up the epoxy, and the fiberglass layer, which was underneath here, kind of didn't get sanded off with the rest of the epoxy using that method. So I ended up switching to hand sanding with just a piece of 50 grit sandpaper. And what I did was, to minimize that effect, I kind of just sanded it like at an angle like that, which sanded the fiberglass in addition to the epoxy. So this came out pretty good. I don't know how I could do better with this layup technique. I understand that there's vacuum infusion, where you basically put in your materials dry into the mold and then mix up the epoxy and draw the epoxy through the fabric. But I've never tried that, and I think that that's the only way to really get rid of all of these little kind of imperfections. There are only a handful of imperfections with the bubbles, but I don't know. I think it looks pretty good. But I'm not sure how to fix the weave issues here. But again, it's pretty minor, especially on top of a car. You won't be able to see that very much. I love the way the black edge turned out. Let's get a little dust on it right now, but I like the this is where I put the wax on in the mold, or on the original plug, I guess. That turned out really good. So one thing that kind of surprised me, this is the fiberglass side of it. So it's got a rough surface, so it can be glued to laminate something else like brackets or whatever onto here. So there's the mold came out of. Now with I did a Miata door, and the mold is just sitting on the car door right now, and it kind of pops on and pops off of there pretty easily. And I found something interesting when I tried that with this. So I can push it down into this mold, and it fits like a glove. It's tight, and so I did that after cleaning. I washed both the mold and the part. And what I found is that it took me like 10 to 15 minutes to get the part out again. It was extremely difficult, and I believe it is due to the shape of the edges, because the edges are 90 degrees, so they're kind of, there's a lot of friction on the edges, especially given how tight it is. So I think a lot of the problem that I had separating mold, or separating the part from the mold, was due to that, and not due to the wax, the one coat of wax that I used. However, I do have a part on order that's basically, it's a wedge where pressed air comes through an opening in the wedge. So you stick the wedge in like this, and then release the air from a tank, and it just pops, supposedly pops it off. I've heard it's a really effective tool. So that's one thing I'm going to change. During layup, I'm going to change the amount of cabecil that I put in on the next part, and make it thicker so it doesn't ooze as much, so that I'm not having to babysit it for 2.5 hours, whatever, 1 hour. I'm going to mix larger batches of epoxy, not like 100 grams, but like every batch is going to be 200 grams between layers, because I didn't mix enough a couple times and the layers got a little dry. I did mix enough, the right amount for the edge. It's basically required 6 ounces of epoxy. Now, I weighed the dry materials before starting, and dry materials were about 2 pounds 5 ounces. But that included some overlap for the flange, and even a little beyond the flange. So I estimated that the dry materials were about 2 pounds. Now this part weighs 2 pounds 14 ounces. So I know I put more epoxy in than 14 ounces, but I don't think that, I mean, some of it was trimmed off in the flange. I'm not sure how to estimate that, but anyway, 2 pounds 14 ounces. It's flexible. I mean, before I started working with carbon, I always thought it was stiff. Even though I also do some fishing, and my best rods are carbon fiber rods. So I shouldn't have expected it to be stiff, but I did. But you can see, so this was part of the flange that I cut off that was attached to the part. It's got the same thickness, the same layers. It is 5 layers of carbon and 2 layers of fiberglass right there. And it's flexible. It is very flexible. But it springs back pretty much to where the shape it originated from. So it's not like deforming when I flex it that much. So that's what the part is capable of doing, except for the edges where it has unknown, you know, this is more solid epoxy here, so it has less flexibility. I don't know how much less. But anyway, so went over a couple things that I would change during layup. During vacuum bagging, not really much I would change there. Now, during part removal, I mentioned the wedge, the air wedge. And also, I got new blades for the oscillating tool because my blade was dull, and that was a mistake. I should never have used a dull blade. It worked, but it was a little bit slow. So I got this one, wood with nails, titanium coated, and this one, which is carbide, heavy duty metal. It's got, the teeth aren't as sharp feeling as these, but I think this blade's a little thicker. We'll have to see how it cuts. The other thing I would change, you can see I'm wearing it. I didn't wear a loud vest, even though I had one in the box. I never thought to get it out. So a lot of my clothes got dust and fibers on them. So anyway, signing off.